Growing up in a really small town, you don't realize what options are out there. Like literally, your options growing up in a small town were sawmill. There were 2 massive sawmills. There was 1 mine, and logging, or you could be a stock boy. And that's so. All of my friends, pretty crazy. All of us young guys at different ages. Some started in town, stock boy stuff. Those kind of jobs like me, and then just about everybody at 18, very few people that, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I guess, wouldn't quite be, hardly anyone had the money to go to school, and it wasn't something that was really pressed. There would be the odd in our grad class of like 50 kids, and of 50, maybe 1 or 2 went on to be, say, a dentist, doctor, lawyer, left town. For all the rest of us, it was like you hear in a song, the small town thing, Tom Cochrane's that one, you work at the mill, everyone went to work at the sawmill. And good and bad is a lot of those guys never getting out of that town saw what's out there in life. So many of them today are still there. Another big belief of mine, right? Don't do what you love to do. I ended up going to school for engineering. First person in our family, again, because I was able to move out on my own, decided I was going to save up my money and go to school to be an engineer. Thought that was what I wanted. And I can proudly say, 5 years into this engineering degree, I realized I'd made a big mistake and I hated it. I was a people person. I couldn't sit behind a desk. It was electrical engineering is what I went for. Thought that's what I wanted to do. So I'm in school for electrical engineering, too embarrassed to admit to my parents and all my relatives that I'd made this mistake. So I figured, again, the way I was brought up, you've got to push through. You got to finish this thing. And I will tell you that I've always stuck to that. Anything you start, you have to finish. So I finished it, and through a random chain of events, when I have 3, maybe even 6 weeks left to graduate, I was hit by some tourists in our small town, like a head-on type accident, and just about killed me. And one of the best things that ever happened to me, as random as that sounds, was being almost killed. And that's happened a few times in my life now. Most of them for the best. And yeah, my whole life changed. That led to me not being, of course, I was 2 years in rehabilitation, not able to do physical work. So I worked with special needs kids. That's where that started. Then I got drug into the car business through a funny chain of events. The last thing I ever wanted to be was a car salesman. Turns out I'm okay at that, I guess. And yeah, get talked into doing that, become the #1 salesman in the country, and then start running dealerships. So I ended up at the mine. So when I mentioned earlier, I worked at that great supermarket, and they were such great people. Penny and Al, I'll never forget them, and raised me like their own kid that way. So from there, I ended up offered, that's an important one, actually a life lesson. So back to hard work and attitude. The mine hired, every year the mine would hire about 40 summer students at least. So Equity Silver Mines, great place to work, by the way, big pay, non-union, everyone helped each other out. And they hired me, I was one of the summer students, and I wouldn't turn down any job, and I would work any hours they wanted and all the rest of it, and wanted to learn as much as I could. So never turned down. When we have big things would go sideways up there, if I had to work 17 or 18 hours, I would. And that paid off when at the end of the summer it was 41 or 48 people, I was the only one asked to stay on full time, and ended up being the last guy hired full time at that mine actually, and was told the youngest guy in mining in the province. I just turned 18, and they hired me on. And then they put me on a crew, the A crew, run by Phil Chetwin. I'll never forget, because the best boss I ever had, I believe. I've had a lot of good ones, but he stood out. Phil Chetwin called me Green Pea and gave me the absolute worst jobs you could imagine because he wanted me to quit. He had the best crew at Equity Silver Mines, and was proud that the 7 or 8 men that he had would do the work of 12 to 14 others. So he was very upset when he got saddled with the kid that knew nothing, the mechanically inept, wet behind the ears Green Pea. So he hires me and gives me this, and then every shit job you could think of. Sent me into copper sulfate tanks, working the cyanide plant, underneath the presses, which is a horrific job where you're laying under these concentrate presses and stuff just literally is pouring off them onto you. You end up just black, cold, wet. Gave me every shit job he could for about 3 months. And when I wouldn't say no and I took on every other job, he finally kind of welcomed me to the crew. And then we ended up kind of great friends for years later. And we had this incredible crew. And funny when you see these things in life. So there we are, and I told him I wanted to learn. I wanted to pick up as many shifts as I could. Always had these aspirations to, I wanted to build, I was building a certain house and such I wanted to have in cars and racing and stuff. So I wanted to learn as many circuits as possible. Mine has X amount of big buildings, these circuits. There's about 6 of them. Average one takes a year and a half to learn, and I learned 5 of the 6 in 2 years. So I'd put in shifts. So you worked 4 12-hour days. With travel time, it was 14 hours. So you would get up at 5 in the morning, 4 or 5. You would pick up the whole crew. Then you go to this place to get your lunch. Then you'd go up the hill, start your shift, work your 12 hours, the same, come back down. So you literally left at 5 or 6 in the morning and got home at 9:30, 10 at night. So you'd shower and go to bed. So you do 4 days of this, 4 on and 4 off. So on my 4 days off, I would always ask to pick up an extra shift. So when I could do that, I could learn other circuits, both making myself more valuable to them and making more money. I thought I might as well. And then on the other, any days I wasn't working there, I worked at a freight company. My buddy John, his dad, owned a freight company. So on my other days off, I worked there. So, and it's interesting because all the work, kept me somewhat out of trouble, but also allowed me to pretty much do whatever I wanted. So I've had all these crazy experiences throughout my life because money never was something that held me back, but obviously a person had to work for it, right? So, yeah.